From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 9 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger. Some 30 Yellowstone County inmates who tested positive with COVID-19 last week are just days away from being moved out of isolation and back into the jail's general population. But first, inmates will have to get clearance from the jail's 24/7 medical staff as they continue to monitor cases and symptoms at the detention facility. This all after a male inmate tested positive earlier last week, prompting the county to test 70 other inmates in that unit. 30 tested positive and were moved to isolation. However, long before the outbreak happened, the Yellowstone County Sheriff feared a spike in COVID-19 cases could be coming to his jail as the virus started to take off here in Montana. And although staff at the Yellowstone County Detention Facility can segregate the inmates who test positive for the virus, overcrowding at Montana jails remains an issue. As MTN's Andrea Lutz reports, it's a problem that likely won't go away even when the virus does.
When the Montana Supreme Court asked judges across Montana to release nonviolent inmates from Montana jails to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in March,
I think we were down to about 330 to 340 inmates at one time.
Yellowstone County Sheriff Mike Linder had an instinct the virus would show up in his jail anyway.
We knew those people would be coming back, at least some of them. We anticipated what was going to happen and we prepared for it.
The staff prepared by closing off sections of the jail to use for the sole purpose of quarantine, a move they made all the way back in March. Back then, Montana Supreme Court Chief Justice Mike McGrath said due to the confines of jails, it would be virtually impossible to contain the spread of the virus.
We kept room available for isolation. We kept room available for quarantine, and that's what we're doing now. The problem is the numbers continue to grow.
An unforeseen consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic that's impacted capacities at jails, a spike in domestic abuse cases.
Probably because of the lockdowns and a lot of people staying at home, they go to jail. And we don't make the decision that, well, we're not going to put them in jail because of the overcrowding. They end up in jail and we make room for them.
In just a few short months, the jail's capacity has grown once again to numbers in the 500 inmate range.
We're crowded and we're dealing with it.
80 of those inmates are Department of Corrections holds. And while overcrowding is an issue in most Montana's jails, Linder says those inmates will not move anytime soon, especially with new COVID cases.
We pretty much anticipated that was going to happen, and we weren't sure if we were going to get another spike in COVID activity in the jail or not. But we've got a great staff down here. They do a good job. We've got 24-hour medical, and so they're able to keep an eye on things and manage it, and that's what we do.
In Billings, Andrea Lutz, MTN News.
Today's inmate capacity at the jail is roughly 480. Linder also tells us when COVID impacts the jail, each inmate is tested. Well, another COVID-related death in Stillwater County now brings the state's total to 98. Active COVID-19 cases are up to nearly 1,700. There have been more than 6,800 confirmed cases and close to 5,000 recoveries. Dozens of coronavirus cases are now linked to the Sturgis motorcycle rally in South Dakota. There are more than 100 cases across 8 states, including Montana and Wyoming. 9 people testing positive so far in Wyoming. Montana's numbers aren't released. School just getting underway today in Hardin, and already there's a positive case. In a letter to the community, Hardin Superintendent Eldon Johnson said a very small number of teachers and students last had contact with the infected student on Monday. Bighorn County Public Health will follow up with close contacts to give instructions about isolation and quarantine. In the Billings Public Schools, administrators are anticipating that at some point students will become infected with the virus. Now, what the public will learn about any possible case is all up to the Yellowstone County Health Department. Billings School Superintendent Greg Upham said today that initially Riverstone Health may only release a round number of students infected across the district. We won't necessarily know the particular school or classroom where the positive case came from due to school and health privacy laws. However, if the health department starts closing individual classrooms or entire schools, it's possible that officials would make a public statement about the closure.
That doesn't mean that, if school Z, high school, school Z has a multitude of cases that Mr. Felton and Riverstone Health may say that in School Z we're experiencing, 28 cases or whatever, and so therefore we've taken this action. He hasn't said they'll do that, but it kind of follows suit into what reporting there has been prior to.
Part of the responsibility to keep schools COVID-19 free falls on parents. If a student is showing any sign of illness, the district asks that the student be kept home and taken to their doctor. Have you noticed those Vote Yes for Public Safety signs popping up all across Billings? They're reminding voters about the city's public safety mill levy election coming up next month. Those mail-in ballots get mailed out on Friday. Q2's Jay Cohn breaks down the choice for voters and what's at stake for the city.
It's the election no one is thinking about. Before the big national election grabs all the attention, Billings voters will consider a public safety mill levy that helps fund the city's police, fire, and 911 services.
Because of COVID-19, this is not the conversation about adding resources to really drive down crime rates, reduce response time. This is really about retaining kind of the status quo and not sliding backwards.
City Administrator Chris Kukulski was not in Billings in 2014 when the city's last public safety levy went down to defeat. But he knows it was close, within 1,000 votes. And Kukulski hopes this time around will be different.
I wish I could say we could do that with less people, but this is a people business. Somebody dials 911, they want a human being to show up for their emergency. If they're a victim of a crime, they expect someone to take the time and work them through the criminal justice process and hold whoever the perpetrator is accountable. And it just costs more today than it did 15, 16 years ago when the voters approved the current levy.
Budget-wise, the city's police and fire departments still rely on funding from a 2004 levy that raises $8.2 million per year. The city wants to repeal that fixed amount levy and replace it with one that collects 60 mills worth of property taxes.
So the voters say no, we'll continue to collect the 8.2 fixed amount. If they say yes, we'll go 60 mills, and as our tax base grows, we will bring in more money to help deal with the increased cost of public safety.
Bottom line for taxpayers, the proposed levy will cost $475 a month for a median home worth $212,000, $57 a year. Kukulski hopes taxpayers will recognize a wise investment when they see it.
It's an investment worth looking into. Public safety has a significant impact on the value of our assets, homes, businesses, properties. So to be able to continue to do what these two departments do for us is important.
The bottom line for the city is the cost of paying for public safety is going up each year, while the city's ability to pay for it is stuck at 2004 funding levels. Thursday, we'll hear from Police Chief Rich St. John and Fire Chief Bill Rash to get their perspective on public safety in Billings. I'm Jay Cohn reporting for MTN News.
Thanks a lot, Jay. And earlier tonight, city officials discussed the public safety levy at Amen Park. The presentations are happening in each ward of the city so voters can learn about and ask questions about the proposed levy. There's another one set for tomorrow night. That'll be at North Park, and that starts at 7 p.m. Well, today is Women's Equality Day. It's a day celebrating the adoption of the 19th Amendment, which gave women across the country the right to vote. Downtown Helena, the Equal Work Task Force was joined by Governor Bullock and Lieutenant Governor Cooney to celebrate the occasion. Bullock renewed his equal pay executive order and extended the Equal Pay for Equal Work Task Force through 2022 to continue its work to try and narrow the wage gap. When the task force began its work in 2013, Montana women made around 32% less than their male co-workers. In 2020, the gap has been narrowed to 27%. Now, Jen Ewell with the task force says the pay gap is an issue that's affected each generation, and it will take time to fully curb it.
When you're talking about equal pay, you're not talking about any one behavior or any one person. You're talking about something that is literally in the water. And so what we know is that there are ways at which we can start to chip away at the pay gap, but it's going to take a long time before we finally are able to address all of the deep roots.
In national news tonight, Hurricane Laura is on her way to becoming a catastrophic Category 5 hurricane when she barrels into land tonight, nearly 15 years to the day of Hurricane Katrina. CBS's Omar Villafranca has more.
More than 30 million people are in the path of the giant storm. Along the Texas and Louisiana Gulf Coast, many are still preparing for Laura's punch, while others opt to get out of the way. Lake Charles Mayor Nick Hunter says people who refuse to evacuate are in great danger.
But I can guarantee you there's going to be a large portion of the city that's going to see some pretty significant storm surge. So if you are here, you're going to have to hunker down.
The storm surge is expected to be as high as 20 feet, with flooding as far as 40 miles inland. FEMA Administrator Pete Gaynor told CBS News the surge will be unsurvivable in Cameron Parish, just south of Lake Charles. Laura is expected to make landfall overnight, but already floodwaters are making roads and parking lots impassable in Lafourche Parish to the east. The Category 4 storm is following the track of Hurricane Rita, which barreled into the Gulf Coast 15 years ago, causing $12 billion in damage. Omar Villafranca, CBS News, Lake Charles, Louisiana.
Well, ahead on the MTN News at 9, why a special 5-year-old Forsyth boy who loves Iron Man is being called a hometown superhero. And Rob is pinch hitting for Bob tonight. We're going to tell you what you can expect in the forecast. We'll be right back.